everybody. You're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Billy Z.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And we are coming at you with our long-promised New York Comic Con 2016 update. And we are very proud to bring a returning guest to the show. He is the author of Stabbity Bunny and a couple of other comic book projects. Please welcome back to the show, Mr. Richard Rivera.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Really glad to have you on. And again, what we all four share is we, in varying degrees, were involved with New York Comic Con. And really, New York Comic Con for me kicked off with the Flame On event over at Rock Bar on the Tuesday night. And that was shepherded by our own co-host here, Mr. Brian Pittard. So, Brian, why don't you tell us about that event?
Well, we wanted to keep that, Rock Bar tradition going that you started back a couple years ago and, kind of have a through line. And I know you had another event at Rock Bar, but we kept the same sort of interview game show kind of balance that we had done previously. We called it Fan Feud because the idea was always we want fans or guests to come and actually be sort of competing against each other for their fandoms. And so we actually were able to stay true to that, but not unlike Hollywood Game Night, hosted by Jane Lynch. We brought in a celebrity to kind of work and or help the people asking the questions or be a part of it in some way. And it was great. I mean, we were up against Tuesday night at a gay bar without a major, we're Flame On. We're not the Nerdist or something. So it wasn't a huge crowd, but oh my God, I think everybody that was there had a great time. And we picked up a few, I think, later in the evening, people who were coming out for their Rock Bar game night, which happened right afterwards, and which several of us stayed for. So, yeah, this was Pat and myself putting it on, kind of running everything. We live video streamed it for the first time. That was a production. And the audio came out okay. It wasn't as crisp and loud as I would like. For everything, but the video turned out actually pretty good, and the audio is okay and certainly usable. We put it out on the podcast feed a couple weeks ago. We had some great guests, of course. Like I talked about, I think on a previous episode, we had Bill Zanowitz and Chris Cummins, of course, my compatriots, and a couple other things. And you guys were fantastic. I hoped your experience was at least as enjoyable as mine. I know it was very rushed because, oh my God, we knew we only had a little bit of time, but did you have fun, Bill?
Absolutely. Good. I really enjoyed not being in charge, I have to say, more than anything.
I mean, I totally appreciated all the work you have done and still do for your events there and other places. It was a little nightmarish. We flew up there sorry, my dog is being restless. We flew up there on Sunday and we're not doing a whole lot, but I was still writing questions. All the questions I asked, I wrote, and it was a little hectic and stressful. And then cabling was a problem, all the usual nonsense. But we made it through. We also had my former Flame On co-host and now IGN's comic editor Joshua Yale there. He was there for the show and also to help us out a little bit. Ariel Italic, great New York drag queen, does some RuCap kind of RuPaul Drag Race reviews. And then Ophir Eisenberg from NPR's Ask Me Another, who we actually met 2 years previous to that at a New York Comic Con event. They did a live taping of Ask Me Another, the NPR game show with her and Jonathan Colton. And we met her that night, and we've kept up a relationship with her, had her on the show, to have her on Flame On as an interview guest, and pretty good friends. Acquaintance. We're like having this person in our sphere of friends because Ophir is a sweetheart. I know, Bill, you probably got to talk to her a little bit when you guys hanging out.
Yeah, with Chris before the event really started.
She's so sweet and so funny, and the people who don't they listen to Ask Me Another, you get a taste of it, but you really have to see her stand up or read her book. Sleeping My Way to Monogamy, Screw Everyone, could never remember the title. But she was fabulous. She finished out our show. Pat got to interview her and Ariel, and it was great. We had a lot of good response from Rock Bar, of course. Jason there, we really appreciate all his stuff, and It was great, and it was amazing to have it over with early in the week, so that the rest of the week we had a great time, fairly low stress. Even the con this year wasn't as stressful, at least for me on Thursday. So, oh my God, it was a great time. Otherwise, of course, going to Chris's event with the Doctor Who stuff at the way station, and then Bill, your event with Chris. I mean, each night was some just great fun programming of friends of mine, which was just even better. So we had a great time.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to thank again Jason Romas over at Rock Bar, because there is no way we could pull off these events without his assistance.
Oh yeah, indispensable.
No way in hell we could do that. So.
I do want to thank, besides Jason, who again is amazing, is actually helping Pat out on another event. I think by the time this airs, it will have already happened. But Paul Middleton, a musician friend of Pat's, is coming over and playing Rock Bar on Thursday, October 20. Was that the 8th, I guess? But additionally, Zan Christensen was not there. Unfortunately, Northwest and Prism, they weren't able to make the trek out to New York. But Zan donated a bunch of great prizes, and Chris Cummins also donated some great prizes. So I really appreciate their donations, because without that, I would have been buying stuff and getting stuff out of my own prize closet, which is, probably a good thing because I have too much shit. But
yeah. Well, you alluded to it, and the second night, Bryan and myself were involved as judges for the Doctor Who event, which took place over at the Way Station in Brooklyn. I think this is Chris's third or fourth year he's done this.
I was only involved last year, but I think he's done it for a while.
But that certainly was a good time. It's always controlled chaos once you get going, but some of the costumes were unbelievable.
Yeah, I was really impressed. There was a Tasha Lim from Doctor Who. There was River Songs. There were some cross-playing doctors. The crowd never disappoints at that event.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's one of those events that kind of works itself, because Chris comes really prepared, but really it's just, trivia and costume contest, and you're in and you're out, and people have so much fun.
One of my favorite costumes was the woman that went as 3 different doctors at the same time. I thought that was really clever. What was I always forget the crying
Weeping Angels. They
freaked everybody out, because all of a sudden you're watching and they're just approaching, and it was especially Chris seemed to be a bit freaked out. So.
Oh, Lord.
Well, then the next night, which was the evening of the first day of New York Comic Con, and we'll get back to went down at New York Comic Con, actually on the floor of the Javits and in the panels and all that. But I, along with the aforementioned Chris Cummins, hosted an event called Tales from the Toy Box, where we were celebrating toys. That's all I can say. We're celebrating toys. And we had some great guests. We had Ed Cato from Captain Action Enterprises. We had Bob Joy from Alex Brands. And we also had one of our favorite guests on the show, Billy Brooks, who was wonderful, talking about his history as a Star Wars and a Doctor Who collector. And I also got to hang out with Billy a lot on Saturday, which was a great afternoon. And I'll have to thank our various sponsors since you did the same, Bryan. So a big thank you to Alex Toy Company, to Captain Action Enterprises, to Quirk Books, to Figures Toys Company, to IDW. I know I'm forgetting somebody there. NECA. Our prizes were amazing. And it was, Bryan, I know you had to leave before that really kicked in.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, between the Simonson design Thor Captain Action costumes, to the alien eggs, to those amazing NECA Terminator figure, we had an abundance of gifts. It's a real thrill to have prizes of that level. It was a little weird with the spillover from the RuPaul's Drag Queen All-Stars. Is that what it's called? I'm a bad guy.
All-Stars. Drag Race All-Stars.
Drag Race All-Stars. I get demerits. But the people who were there that were focused on our evening were very focused, and I would really like to do it at the con next year. But as I mentioned, the Thursday was the first day of the con, and one of the exhibitors at the con was our own Rich Rivera. So, Rich, why don't you tell us what New York Comic Con was like for you?
Well, as always, Bill, it was amazing. The crowds were incredible. Even trapped behind a table or enjoying being behind a table. I got to see, such amazing cosplay. Got to meet a lot of people. Every once in a while, before setup and then after. Got to visit some of the other exhibitors that were there. Lots of great stuff. I mean, not to go too insane here, but I mean, this really is the golden age, I think, as far as so many people with so many great ideas that can, kind of pull that together themselves and using the resources that are out there now. It is, I think, while still a lot of work goes into it, I believe it's more possible and easier for people to get their books out there. As far as me personally, meeting fans was incredible. And, the whole, I was telling Dwayne Biddix and Liesl Buenaventura, my illustrator and my color artist, respectively, about some of the people that I met. And to be there, I mean, what the spectacle of NYCC, I mean, it's just mind-blowing. And to be there and have, amazingly enough, more than one person come up, jumping up and down, their hands, kind of fidgeting, saying, "Oh my God, Stabbity Bunny, this is why I came here. This is the most exciting thing for me. This is why I came to New York Comic Con." To have that even one time was mind-blowing, but to have it, just a handful of times was really heartwarming. And to, if nothing else, our story's getting out there and that we're entertaining some people, is really heartwarming. So we're honored and humbled at our reception by some of our fans. It was incredible, and people coming up, do you have a new issue? What's going on? And we were there with Gateway Comics, and they've got Max Hunter, Redux by Proxy, Primal, Ultra Vixen, and a few other titles. And it's a very supportive, loosely based. I don't want to define them for them, but publishing houses. People coming together. They want to share their experience because they've had a few years of trying to bring their books together. They talked to some people who were just starting out, and they want to network writers and artists and just kind of get the word out and make sure that some people maybe don't have to fight or struggle quite as much as they did to pull all those pieces together. So they were incredible too. We were able to be there because of them, and we really appreciate that. But overall, I'd say the couple of times that I stepped away from the table, the moving crowds of people, it was like a river, and you just kind of put your arms by your side and threw yourself in and got carried along until you got to close where you wanted to be, and then you try to exit. And I don't know. I know I'm beginning just to babble on here, but after just thinking about, it's just such an exciting convention. There's really nothing else like it. And it's incredible. I mean, you guys were there,
Just wondering, as somebody who exhibited, was load-in on Wednesday? Do they offer that to you, or is it like a rush job
Yes.
and you get everything? Okay.
Yeah, we came in Wednesday, and in fact, I mean, we were there first thing Wednesday, 8 o'clock in the morning, and there were already some people set up. So, yeah, but in the publishers area, in Artist Alley, I think a lot of people do wait till the last minute because they're rolling in with basically a suitcase and throwing some things down, and they've got what they need, and they set up and they're done. But there were a number of us there on Wednesday quite early, making sure everything was in place. And again, kudos to NYCC because, I mean, given what they have to deal with, besides the crowds, besides all of the exhibitors, to varying degrees, some of us more needy than others, I will admit, but they do an incredible job. I have been to much smaller conventions that were much less controlled. Even load out was incredibly well handled. I can't believe how well they did that. At every step, they were organized. They've got the people. They spend the time to make sure they've got the resources to make things run make sure things run smoothly.
And the reason I mainly asked you about the load-in is I know from my experiences in the business end of Broadway theater how complex relationships with unions can be. So
Right.
I didn't know how restrictive they were in regards to access early on. So, Bryan, you were able to spend one day at the con, and why
Yep.
don't you tell us what went down while you were there?
So I actually only experienced New York Comic Con on a Thursday. And some years that's really good. Some years I think actually one year was a Friday too. But so it's not as crazy in general, which is kind of nice. We got in there, and it was right when the show had opened. We were probably one of the first, in the group, just because of the way it all worked out. But we kind of just went straight for the main floor and went around to some stuff that we know we wanted to check before they got too crazy. And one of the things we didn't realize we wanted to check out was Marvel's booth. Did you guys also go get a free beard trim?
No, because by the time we found out about it, it was a bit crowded.
So when we were there, they literally had no one in the seat. I mean, this was again on the first thing on the cons open. But basically, what it was is you picked a style of beard or of facial hair trim that is reminiscent of a Marvel character, of course, pretty much promoting Doctor Strange, but they had many others to choose from. And so then they would do the trim, and then they gave you the trimmer or gave you a trimmer that they were using to do the trim from Norelco, and it was really nice. It's like one of these flat blade sonic. It's not sonic, but it vibrates or does some crazy voodoo that feels really like you wouldn't even know you're being cut. And it's very smooth shave, and you can use it as a beard trimmer. And so I'm basically using it as my travel beard trimmer now. And again, it was completely free. You just had to sit down and let them trim you, and it was really cool. I got the I think I said I got the Hercules.
Okay.
But really, they didn't do a whole lot. They just kind of trimmed it off. Pat also got kind of a minimal trim, but then the Marvel TV, like, we're wandering around, and they got actually his trim on Marvel TV or whatever. So they actually had him stick around a little longer because there was nobody else in line, which was again just like crazy. I met a couple random people over in the gay area, the Geeks Out / what's his name?
Our little corridor with Josh.
Yep.
Joe Glass over around the corner, and yeah.
Yep. So I met him. We talked about the Pride and talked to a couple other people in there. They were really nice. And honestly, that was all that the main floor really had. Oh, and we made a logo with Legos in one of the booths. I mean, it was really like whatever. But the real fun, of course, at that show is definitely in the Artist Alley, because that's the kind of show I like and gravitate towards. And it is a separate space, which evidently next year is going away. Not Artist Alley, but they're not going to have it in that same space. So that's interesting because they don't know where they're going to put it yet. So it may actually spread it out a little bit and put it in another venue near the Javits, which will be interesting.
What was the rationale behind that? Are they redoing that area?
It's under construction for a few years, yeah. So it's outside of.
Oh, Lord in heaven.
Yeah, it's outside of their control, and yeah, that's kind of a thing. But yeah, Artist Alley is great. Talked to Ryan Brown about curse words. Got the Ashcan edition, which is great. Missed the Wizards party, which I was really pissed because I guess Charles Soule was playing in the band. And it's like a wizard rock band. And I'm like, damn it, that sounds amazing. So I haven't talked to anybody about how the party went, but I'm really, really curious to see if there's any good YouTube videos of the band playing. Janet Leigh, Ramon Perez, of course. Had to talk to Ramon. He was there.
For people who have not listened to the show before, Bryan loves Ramon Perez.
He's just such a handsome, talented, metropolitan Canadian man. Like, I can't not. And I think you all are on the same page here. I mean, I admit I'm a little more verbose about my appreciation.
You're far more verbose about it. Yeah.
But I did pick up a cool Barda Mr. Miracle print that I had never seen before that he had there, which is really cool. But yeah, no, it was just a lot of fun. And then we went to the Geeks Out, rewind that. We went to the Times Out New York gay X-Men or LGBT X-Men panel, of which there was much consternation.
That was the infamous one with the poorly placed question or inappropriate question with a very inappropriate answer from Peter David, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yes.
All about the not Romani. So yeah, Romani, right?
Yeah, the Romani, the Roma. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's much to do about that online. I don't know that we really want to get into it here, but needless to say, most of the panel was pretty tame. Had Max Wittert, Danny Ketchum from Marvel, Chris Claremont, most probably notably, and Peter David, who had the inappropriate answer to the inappropriate question. But yeah, up to that point, the panel was kind of lame and tame, and I didn't really think it was very exciting or interesting, and so I had checked out mentally at one point, and then out of nowhere, the skies opened and tirades issued forth. But anyway, so yeah, it was fun. We had a great time, as always.
Well, I can say for myself, this was really low key for me. Sometimes with these cons, I get pretty hardcore, and I'm there from the very beginning to the very end. I was really laid back about this one, and I really felt like, in a lot of ways, I was just there to hang with people that were at the show. So for the first day, I was going around with my friend Noah, who I was able to stay with his roommate Jeff Costello, and thank you, Noah and Jeff, for putting me up for 2 nights. Boy, is that that's so much easier to do that with that con. I might explore doing it more days than schlepping from Princeton into the city each day. But there was a benefit to that we'll get to a little later, Steve. And so I hung around with Noah and our friend Dan Duffany for the first day, pretty much for most of the time on the con floor. Went to a couple panels, went to DC's first panel, went to the Archie panel, which I think was on the Saturday. They usually do that on the Saturday. I was able to go to 2 panels that were moderated by Thomas Crowell, who was recently on our show, in regards to the pocket lawyer for comic book creators. For me, one of the best parts was an unexpected guest on Sunday, thanks to my friend Sharon Galbraith, who was able to part with her Pro Pass for one day, and the unexpected appearance of Mr. Steve on Sunday. So, Steve, why don't you tell us about your New York Comic Con there?
Well, I have to say that, my New York experience actually started on Saturday. I was, happy enough to be able to see a bunch of friends that I've known for, over 20 years now, who happen to be there in the city. So I got to go spend time with them. Because I wasn't sure at that point whether I'd be able to, to get a pass for Sunday. Hello, Mile, Omar, Erica, and John. Had a wonderful time on Saturday. However, Saturday evening, I got a very unexpected and very exciting text from Mr. Bill Zanowitz saying that he had procured a badge for me for the next day. So, thankfully, Erica was a wonderful host. I had stayed with them in their apartment in Manhattan, and then she accompanied me down through the very interesting subway system. Because of all the construction, a lot of things were not running the way that they normally do. But got to the 7th Street station. I think that's the news station's right across from Javits. Met up with Mr. Bill, and we walked right in. It was definitely very welcome to be able to just get into the venue a lot sooner, or a lot easier than a lot of other people who are just getting their badges. Ugh.
My friend Edwin had a regular pass for Saturday, and it was a long wait for him to get in.
And it would have been even worse because it was raining on Sunday morning. So
Sunday, I'll qualify for Pro Pass. What a wonderful day.
But yeah, for me, this is of course the largest convention I've ever been to. I've never been to San Diego, to C2E2, or of course New York before. So I was just blown away at how spread out and how much stuff there was. Especially as much stuff as there was that was not comic book related. I wasn't expecting to see all the video game booths and panels that were set up by all the major companies, of course, promoting their stuff. There was, tournaments of Street Fighter V being played, and of course, people able to go to the Square Enix booth and play Kingdom Hearts 2.8 and various other demos from Final Fantasy 15. But just the sheer spectacle of all the different booths, of all the merch, of all the things that were being given away free. I think, Bill, we rated the DC section a couple times for their rotating button collections and free cups and things like that. But Artist Alley was wonderful. I got to meet Blue Delaquanti, who we interviewed last week. I got to see Richard Rivera in person, which was wonderful as well. Got to speak with Joe Glass. Bryan, that was actually really nice to meet him finally. It was just a really exciting time. And also kind of overwhelming. I mean, just going for a single day, there's so much that you want to see and do. You look over and you've got an enormous banner the size of my house for some new sci-fi show. And there's plenty of people that you want to ask about whatever they're selling or what they're trying to promote. But it was very exciting. Now, I did actually get to see another friend of mine who I was hoping to see, my buddy Braden, who is from LA and was there helping out with the Image booth as part of the Skybound publishing team, I guess. Wonderfully enough, he was able to hook me up with some glorious swag, and as I think also for Bill, and we met up with Rob Staker as well. So we all got some great goodies from the Image group. So thank you very much, Braden.
I can say Rob especially was just blown away.
I was just sort of like, stick with me, guys. Yeah, you'll get some good stuff.
Yeah,
but no,
and we did. We can't tell you, but we did.
Yeah. But I was really grateful to Braden for that, because it was. For one, it was wonderful to be able to see him, and two, it was just.
And the worst incognito sighting of Robert Kirkman.
Really?
Yeah.
But it was just it was really nice. Oh, and also Stan Lee walked right by me, so that was kind of cool.
Yes.
He is a very tiny man, and with that it's that shock of white hair that just it's recognizable from any distance. But he was so close, he almost touched me. Of course, he probably would have turned to dust if that happened, but it's.
And again, you're just reminding me of all the other people that we ran into, like Ray, who had created your birthday gift.
Yes. Oh, I got to meet him too. His collection of work is very, very interesting, and I was tempted on very, very many times to just get half his book because it's great.
Steve seemed to be a favorite of Ryan Brown so much that he gave him the sunglasses off his head.
He did. I did get those curse words sunglasses, and apparently it was.
Pat got that too as well, right?
Yeah.
Bryan?
Yeah, they came with the ash can. You got both for like $10 or something. So yeah, he of course, like, I was like, oh, they're mine. He grabs them and he takes the picture. I'm like, oh, all right, that works.
Well, it was actually really great because I think when we walked up to him, he had been sold out, quote unquote, for quite some time, and dug through his own personal bag to pull out the last pair, which was great. So I was lucky on that front.
Yeah.
But no, it was a great time. Obviously, there was a lot more to see and do.
And one thing I love is, with these creators, there's a few that we actually have a relationship with, like Jamal Igle, when we stopped by and said hi.
And hear him speak French too. It was really cool.
Yep. His wife is French.
Yeah.
We stopped by my friend Tom Kelly from Chicago, and we both purchased stuff. Me with the Hello Kitty Iron Fist.
I got the Hello Kitty Wonder Woman, and got to ogle Tom a little bit. But anyway,
Wendy, you didn't hear that?
Didn't hear it at all. Not for me. Nope, not me.
I was able to hand off a couple of copies of Crime Fighter Inquiry to certain people, like Charles Soule and Mike Pellerito of Archie, who's the nicest guy.
That was nice meeting him. He is apparently a football fan, Bill.
Yeah, we were talking about the Giants-Packers game that was going on that evening. Yeah, Mike's distracting. Let's just put it that way.
Very.
Yeah, he's very distracting.
Very.
Oof.
Shivers. I think you just kind of almost fainted like a little schoolgirl.
Not quite like Matt Wagner. Matt Wagner is like that's like Icarus. I can't stare too close to the sun. Plus the worry of him seeing my boner. But
there's that.
There's that. But Mike's a handsome man. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, and again, you had mentioned Rob Stager that we were able to hang out with. I hung out with Billy Brooks for most of Saturday afternoon. My friend Edwin, who I mentioned, the guys from 11 O'Clock Comics, who was able to hang out with on Saturday night before we went out with the aforementioned Sharon and Andrew and Rob Stager for Rob's birthday on Saturday night. Went down to the village, and then I called it an early night. I was apart from Thursday night, I was a real choir boy because it is exhausting, and for the first time from New York Comic Con, I got con crud. So I've been dealing with a cold for 2.5 weeks at this point, but it happens.
Hey, you weren't the only
started-
one. I got
I know.
started my fall cough spree, so I'll be
Yeah.
coughing and short of breath at least through November. Thanks, New York Comic Con.
Actually, I think we all three cross-pollinated there in that group picture that we took.
Oh, you got it too there, Richard?
Yeah. I'm about 2.5 weeks, yeah.
Well, I started on antibiotics today. We'll see what that does.
I think I'm just going to have to stay home from work for the next month and a half. I think, it's just got to be safer than sorry.
I've only been in the office 6 days since we've been back.
Shush.
I'm sorry. I'm one of those guys who is able to work from home sometimes, so that's what I did. And my doctor said I was the third case of some kind of ailment post New York Comic Con that he has seen. Yeah, so there you go, New York Comic Con, and I know that there were some minor controversies. You had mentioned the situation with the LGBT X-Men panel. There was a lot of hubbub in regards to fights on the Toy Tokyo line and the lottery in regards to the Funko booth.
That was bizarre. That Funko booth lottery.
They did have wonderful things. The Wacky Races stuff was really something if you walk past and see what those things were like, but it was nuts. In the last few years, I really haven't looked to New York Comic Con as a shopping show because it is so difficult maneuvering around a lot of the con because it is so crowded, and it's not like you can bring something out to your car and come back in if it's too heavy. I did the count, and this is my 9th New York Comic Con that I had gone to. I did not go the first 2 years, but this is my 9th. Well, Richard, I also wanted to bring up, since you are the author of Stabbity Bunny, that you have something you want to tell us about going on in the Stabbity Bunny world. So why don't you talk to us about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, we are kind of still in the first quarter of our Kickstarter, moving towards the halfway there. We did fund in the first 4 days, so that's awesome. And we are now working towards our stretch goals, which are going to include some variant covers by our very own Dwayne Biddix, but also by Michael Loco Duck Duran. And we've got some artwork and things that are going to be kind of cool little goodies to give out for free as we go to the people who have already at the $10 reward level or higher. But enough of the goodies and more about the Kickstarter for just a minute. Basically, Stabbity Bunny, and this kind of evolved over time, but this is our current pitch here. Stabbity Bunny, we like to say, at least thematically, occurs at the intersection of Nightmare on Elm Street and Sesame Street, where a plush bunny and his current little girl battle an ancient evil. Basically, Stabbity Bunny is something that I worked on for years before I even approached a single artist about illustrating it. I really treated it more like a book and wrote all 36 issues before we began making even issue 1. I'm kind of rewriting as we go just a little bit because what I was writing 4 years ago or so isn't necessarily what I'm writing now, so I revisit each page as we go and kind of fine-tune that, but the basics of the story, the bones of the story will remain the same. Basically, it stars Grace, a little 7-year-old girl, and a bunny that has been in their family, a plush bunny, for 100 years, and he was always called Hansi, which translates into God is gracious. But about a year ago, Grace was looking for Stabbity, and they're like, who, honey? And she's like, Stabbity, oh, I found him, never mind, Mom. And she said, well, why did you rename him Stabbity? And he's like, well, that's what he told me his name is. And her the worst thing she had experienced so far in her life was an ice cream headache. But by page 2 of where we start looking into her story, by page 2, panel 3, she is kidnapped. And things turn deadly. But let's say that Grace comes out all right, but probably that kidnapper will never be trying to kidnap anyone ever again. Through shadows on the wall, etc., we think that Stabbity may have had something to do with it. And from the very last page in the last panel, we're pretty sure Stabbity had something to do with it. But exactly what, why the main bad guy is after them, what secrets Grace's family has, and where they're what their place is in the overall way the world works, is all those are things that will be revealed as we go. The Kickstarter is for issue 5, which is kind of a turning point. We've had 4 covers of the damsel in distress kind of thing with Grace, but the 5th cover is quite different, and it's a turning point in the series, which will lead into, believe it or not, for those of you who have followed the series, be very hard to believe, but a full 19 or so of the 22 pages of issue 6 are all battle pages. There's actually a very involved, very large battle in a book that to this point has kind of stayed away from that and really dealt with more world building, and a lot of the villains were almost like guest appearances. They would appear and they would be moving about in the book, but when it came down to it, it would appear Stabbity dealt with them rather quickly and decisively. But that can't be the case in issue 6. So we're real excited to have that turning point. It's like I'm just waiting. Can we get through issue 5, please? Got to get through issue 5 because we've got issue 6 to get done, and that is a real big reveal and kind of a pause, if you will, in the story, and we'll be collecting those 6 issues together into a big hardback. But
right.
But yeah, we're real excited. We've got all kinds of things. We've got T-shirts. We've got kind of a set of, I guess they're more tumblers, really. I don't know. They're glasses where they're imprinted on 2 sides. You've got Stabbity Bunny on one side, and you've got the logo on the other side, and they come in a 4-pack, kind of a gift box. And we just tried to get some really interesting stuff together this time. And it's the first time we've come back with a Kickstarter. We did early on with issue 1, but I've been involved with self-producing, paying everybody for, and self-publishing about 7 comic books on my own. And after a while, it's like, yep, I think we need to go out there and see if some of the fans want to help us. And they've been very gracious and have jumped right in to help us. And we couldn't be more pleased. We've seen a lot of old faces return and a lot of new faces as well. And we'd like to invite a lot of other new faces. So if anybody wants to go to Kickstarter and do a search for Stabbity Bunny number 5, that's Stabbity Bunny, check us out. See what you think.
Awesome. I was also wondering, in regards to your incentives, the convention cover, is that the convention cover to number 5?
Oh, the convention cover is the original convention cover we did for issue 1.
Oh, for number 1. Okay.
We did a real small print run of those, very small, and I found another stack of them, and I happened to be picking up Dwayne Biddix to go to Columbus, and we went ahead and pre-signed everything, so it's been signed by both the illustrator and the author, and that's one of the things we want to eliminate this time, because the Kickstarter, if we have to mail things back and forth and back and everything else, it can really kind of delay the rewards. So a lot of the,
oh yeah,
I mean
you've
been there, right?
Yep.
Every reward that is not issue 5, I have already. So we'll just be waiting for issue 5 to be completed, and I wanted to be sure that just in case, because we are kind of getting close to the holidays there, if anybody wanted anything to give, like somebody a Stabbity Bunny T-shirt or some of those glasses or whatever, that they could be sure they could do it before the holidays came and left. So we're ready to roll on that, and everything except issue 5. Some of those things will start mailing out, the 3rd week of November.
And I know in the case of Steve and myself and also our friend Rob Stager, who was a Stabbity virgin, that we were basically all caught up.
Oh, awesome. Terrific.
By the time we were there at the show. Is that right, Steve? You got where?
Yeah, actually, I had already read the first issue, but this gave me the chance to actually get all 4 of them together of the first issues. So I now have all of those, and I'm all caught up, and I can't wait for number 5.
Awesome. And you know that, of course, we had a quiet reveal, no big fanfare, no Iceman moment. We had a quiet reveal of one of the cast members and his other half. And, of course, given the cast that we have and the way the story is written, there really aren't, much like a Murder, She Wrote episode, flashback there, there aren't a lot of people that show up that aren't going to have some sort of a part. And even people at bus stops, etc., if you've seen somebody once, you'll probably see them twice. I can say that the guys that we saw in issue 4, they will figure very prominently. One of them looks, has more than a passing resemblance to me, maybe a little bit pointy for ears.
Eerily familiar.
Yes.
How did that happen?
I do not know, except one might say that, wow, cosplay is going to be so easy. And actually, even the way his, because spoiler alert, issue number 8, one of them will be empowered at some point, and there'll be some changes going on there. And even his costume might be designed in such a way so that it was easy for me, or I could accomplish cosplaying him. So yeah, I mean, he'll actually be making appearances at our booth after issue 8 comes out.
Well, again, at the end of the show, we'll provide all of the contact information for you and for the Stabbity Kickstarter. But great to hear that, Richard, and certainly best of success. You've already achieved success with it funding right now. At where are you at? What percentage are you at?
Well, we had our initial burst, and then we kind of leveled off for a few days, so we are at 107% right now.
All right. So we're going to keep going with the show, and we wanted to get a little bit of comic talk in because we really didn't have the window on our last episode where we interviewed Blue. So I'm going to start with Bryan because I'm most interested in the book that he's talking about because I have the first 2 issues and have not had a chance to just sit down and read them. So, Bryan, why don't you tell us about a book from one of your favorite writers?
So I haven't read a good Hickman book in a while. There hasn't really been, I mean, there have been okay Hickman books going on, but, one of his big idea books, kind of like he did way back when he started with the Nightly News and Red Master Mars and some of the other ones that were really early in his stuff. But he comes out with this the Black Monday Murders from Image. Couple months now, September or August, somewhere in there of this year. And what stands out right away is you pick up the book by Hickman and art by Tom Coker, and it is a thick book. Like, it is probably a good 40 pages. So, I mean, it's a little expensive too. I think it's $4.99, but you get a decent amount of comics compared to your average 20-issue book. And so that already sets it sort of apart. Plus the art style on the front, it seems to be kind of a mix of Hickman's kind of odd symbolism that he'll do, some of his own kind of art, vector art, but also some of the covers have Tom Coker's art featured on the cover, and they stand out. They're all like sort of black and white or muted tones. And indeed the book itself, interior, the colors are very muted and sort of a smaller palette than you might normally expect. But yeah, no, it's an interesting visual that you're hit with first, and then you dig into the world of the series, which is all about the secret society, and indeed it looks like sorcery behind businessmen. And I don't mean your average mom and pop small business. We're talking the big multi-billion-dollar firms and the Wall Street traders and sort of the movers and shakers of the community of the world, and their relationship with the dark arts. And I think it's the first issue. I don't have it really quickly accessible here, but they actually have some interesting prologue about the stock market fall of the late 20s. I think it was 29. And it's kind of this interesting idea that, it could have been much worse, but there was a sacrificial lamb of sorts in this cabal that manipulated the markets. And he ended up basically getting kind of sacrificed, and it tends to balance out the markets. And so you get this idea that, like magic typically has a cost. People talk about, spellcraft having some kind of a cost, and, everything you do will be kind of brought back on you and all that sort of idea. Well, in this case, it literally has a cost in terms of money in some respects and in terms of like life. And so the story is sort of a detective story, very noirish, about a murder in the modern era, and the era that they're in. We're in this. It's sort of an alternate reality where this thing is real, but people don't know about it. And so this cop is investigating the murder of this major corporation. Name escapes me at the moment, but the murder is steeped in mystery and symbolism of this weird runic language carved or painted or some kind of marking on him and in the crime scene itself. And over the first 3 issues, he's slowly kind of peeling back the layers of this world and finding out more about what's happening. And you meet all the different people on the board. They do some flashbacks into different eras of this story where there's like a sort of a Russian branch, and there's more of a Western branch, and they're all kind of interacting throughout history and finding portals in the Berlin Wall, or near the Berlin Wall. Like they're mixing. He's mixing kind of real sort of historical touches with this very different sort of potentially hidden history of the world. And all of this is the great stuff that Hickman does. Like, he just is a great storyteller and a great world builder. But again, the art by Coker is really just selling it and giving more of that noir element. And the mystery is going to take a while to play out. In the third issue, there's a suspect, but clearly there's more to the story. And in fact, what I love about the third issue, I don't want to spoil too much, and I'm trying to, be pretty good, but there's an interaction between the client, who's this guy, part of the corporation that they think killed the main character, the murder, and he has an interrogation, like kind of private conversation with his lawyer after an interrogation, and they don't draw it. They use like transcripts basically to kind of go through it, and the transcripts have been redacted. So in some places you get a lot of detail, but in others it's very much redacted down to like an acronym or a word spread out among all the different sentences, one letter at a time. And those are just, the kind of touches that John Hickman always likes to throw in there, and the sort of mixed media that he uses to tell comic book stories. So I'm loving it. It's great. I definitely would love it if it was, coming out more, not regularly, because I think it's coming out once a month. It's just in this hyper shipping world of 2, 3, 4 times a month storytelling. It feels like forever in between each chapter, and there's a lot of storytelling just building up the world right now. So I'm very interested to see where this goes.
So the third issue is out. Hopefully that will be in my next DCBS box. I am really looking forward to reading this, because it sounds like just some of the elements that you presented about them mixing the real world situations with this fantastical situation that they have at the core of the book is something that's definitely in my wheelhouse. All right, let's move over to Richard. Richard, why don't you tell us about something you're reading?
Well, I feel guilty now because the book I'm going to talk about is kind of a classic old school Marvel. I haven't been reading much Marvel, if I'm to be honest, and something about the perverse curiosity of yet another clone conspiracy, in this case in Spider-Man, just drew me back. I had to look. And the difference this time seems to be that I think there's enough clues there to go ahead and say that this time the clones aren't really being grown so much as their DNA is being introduced into a host and kind of overriding that person, I think. And we bring back Gwen Stacy. And the difference also is that it's not just from blood or some skin sample, but this is actually from her cadaver. So she's got the memories right up to that moment. And we get in a little after story, we kind of get a little bit more of what she was thinking when she was paralyzed and right before her death, which isn't all that complimentary to Spider-Man. She was more, of course, shocked and thinking about how he was involved with her father's death. So, I found it to be pretty entertaining. Like I said, all things to do with Spider-Man and the clone, I had to come back one last time and see what they were doing when they revisited that. But, that, and then there was a very interesting moment in the Walking Dead comic as well. A major cast member or cast object meets his end, and that's the only spoiler alert for that one that I'll give.
Which issue of Walking Dead is that actually?
I don't know the number. It's the one that just came out last week, though.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just 1 week old, and Negan is reunited with someone and also loses her.
Obviously Walking Dead's been doing quite a bit recently. In the Image Plus magazine, they've been doing sort of backstories on Negan, sort of his origin story, for lack of a better word.
Which are fantastic.
Oh yeah. I mean,
they are so good.
4 pages each. I think, and they're actually they are pretty compelling. I haven't gotten the last 1 or 2 issues of the magazine. Unfortunately, it was a lot easier for me to read it when it came free with previews. But in any case, having a new issue come out, of course, sort of spotlighting Negan, but also having a major death. It's, of course, perfectly timed for the new episode of the new season that just came out this week as we're recording, with, again, very shocking death in that episode, which is, again, kind of looking at it, I think, is kind of bringing the world in the TV series closer to the world in the comic series. So we'll see how that continues, because they're getting to the point where they're almost caught up with the comics. So technically, but cool, yeah.
I don't know what it was like for you folks, but I had to explain the differences between the comic storyline and the TV storyline to at least 3 people today. But not today, over the last few days, let me put it that way.
Well, who's alive, who's not alive, who does what now in the comic versus the TV show. Yeah.
One thing I also have to say about New York Comic Con, tying it back, the prevalent costume was the non-threatening Negan.
Oh, yeah. The soccer dad Negan.
The soccer dad Negan, or the...
Actually, sometimes literally. There were a couple dads that had their kids there dressed. You're like, oh man.
Yeah. Steve, since you sort of have the mic right now, why don't you tell us about something you're reading?
Well, I've been picking up everything that's been coming out of the new DC Young Animal line. And, I love Doom Patrol because it's weird and I have no idea what's going on, which is perfect. That's kind of par for the course for Doom Patrol for me. Shade the Changing Girl was a very interesting first issue, and I'm pretty excited to actually continue it. I wasn't expecting to like it. And then, of course, the latest debut was Cave Carson Has a Cybernetic Eye, which, aside from being a mouthful of a title, is, I would say, probably the most unique of the output from Young Animal so far. I don't know too much about Cave Carson, so I had to do, some quick Wikipediaing to try and figure out exactly who I was reading about. And of course, Cave Carson is a character who's been around since 1960s, one of the challengers of the unknown.
No.
Oh, he wasn't.
Not a challenger. No, he was a member of the Forgotten Heroes, but no, he was not a Challenger. And I'm not. The only reason I'm interrupting you on that is I'm a huge Challengers fan.
Oh, okay, so he and
But they did present connections with members of the Challengers in this first issue, with a couple of other franchises, which we can talk about.
Yeah, because I guess he and Rip Hunter, and I think in the 90s or 2000s when they brought him back, he got involved with a couple other random things. It just seems like he's one of those odd characters that I don't think DC ever really knows what to do with. He's from an old era of comics, the sort of the mystery pulp kind of stuff, and it just, for me, that's probably why I really haven't seen him in anything modern recently. I think the last appearance that they had of his, according to this, was Infinite Crisis number 5. No, Final Crisis. There's a brief appearance of him in Final Crisis, apparently, number 3. But, I mean, really, in terms of the amount of modern output, there really hasn't been a lot. So it's very interesting that they would choose this particular character. And the comic itself opens up sort of at a rather tragic period in his life where his wife has been is dead. We're not sure exactly how just yet. Possibly cancer, possibly something more nefarious. And for some inexplicable reason, he now has a cybernetic eye. And Michael Avon Emming, who does the art, presents it in a very interesting way. And I think a lot of it is the fact that, if you've seen his work on Powers or any of his other, his other series, he has at times a bit of a animated art style, sort of Bruce Timmish. But then he also has a flair for the surreal, which really kind of lends itself to this particular book, because at times it doesn't really paint a coherent narrative. But I think that's purposeful, because in this, with this particular premise, the cybernetic eye is giving him images or showing him things that may or may not be real. So since we see at times through his eye, we're not necessarily sure if what he's seeing and hearing is actually true, if it's just his memories being sort of distorted and perverted in a way. We're not really sure by the end of the first issue. So it's interesting because there's a lot of cameos from different characters in here. You have the Metal Men show up. You have Wild.
We're just sitting around watching TV.
Just sitting around watching TV. Moment. They're drinking something. Yeah. I don't know why they're drinking stuff, but they are. Wild Dog shows up, and you see his ass, which is very interesting. But
there was a lot of ass. Did you notice the little pen?
Yeah, yes, there was a lot of ass.
I don't know if they're... And in that particular panel, I don't really know what they're implying, because while he's playing with the pen, he's talking about his wife always figured things out, as in she always figured out what was really going on. And I'm like, is this an implication that he's actually gay? I don't really know. It's very confusing. There's a lot of sort of things left unsaid with his conversation with his daughter, and I think that's a very unique and good creative choice. Gerard Way was writing this with John Rivera, so it's possible they have a very interesting direction for Cave Carson. And it's one of those comics that on first read, I wasn't sure if I liked it. And going back and rereading it, I think I understood, or at least enjoyed it a little bit more, the mystery of what exactly they're trying to tell here. So could be very unique, could be very cool, and it's definitely going to go in a direction that I don't think any readers would know or expect. One other thing that I do have to point out, and this is something that's been pretty common so far in the first several issues that Young Animals put out, are these little 1 or 2 page additional comics in the back matter. At first, I think for the first couple of issues they put out, they were just previews for the other comics. However, with this issue, they have a 2-page Superpowers spread about the Wonder Twins by Tom Scioli. That is bizarre and strange, doesn't make any sense, but is very wacky and kind of cool to read. And then he also has a single one-page about that features Batgirl, Joker, and Commissioner Gordon. Again, very interesting, very comics with an X. Just very cool. And not really sure exactly if it's going to tell an ongoing story or if it doesn't really matter. It's just a unique little thing that kind of it gives the feel of this line of maybe a more indie interpretation of DC characters, and that's kind of what I like, and it really makes me think of early Vertigo, which is good because Vertigo hasn't really felt like Vertigo in the past 10 years or so. So I'm interested to see how this is continuing, not just with this issue and with this series, but also with the entire line itself.
Yeah, I'm glad you said early Vertigo because that was definitely the feeling that I had. Because I think something people forget with the titles that transition from DC to Vertigo, like Swamp Thing and Doom Patrol and Shade the Changing Man. Not so much Shade,
and Sandman,
but
Sandman
and
as well.
Sandman.
Yeah,
you think of so many of the most potent moments were these times where they played in the DC Comics sandbox, whether it was the Justice League enlisting the Doom Patrol to save Paris just because they're good at this weird shit, or heartbreaking bits of Sandman involving Lyta and also involving Element Woman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was and it was very early on too, where that.
Yeah.
That was.
And that was the feel I got, that this guy could basically run into anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I also liked that they were reprinting some of the Young Animal Ashcan material in there in regards to the Who's Who pages. I love Who's Who pages. One interesting thing Dan DiDio said at the panel in Baltimore was when they were going through the old style guides for Cave Carson, that's when they found the mention that he has a cybernetic eye, and nobody knows where this comes from. It was never detailed in any story. It just seemed that apparently Gerard just ran with it. I also really like that we have some very nice family moments between Cave and his daughter, which I think is going to be a bedrock for the series going forward, especially with some degree of mystery what actually happened with Cave's wife. And I will also take bearded Cave over non-bearded Cave.
Well, and that's what's really interesting is about that you had mentioned the interaction with his daughter. That's the only time where it seemed normal for him.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything else, the people that he's interacting with are all characters from, that he used to interact with. Obviously, the Metal Men are in there. It's.
Plus that weird company he's working for.
Exus or X.
Yeah, whatever.
XGS. I mean, these are all, I'm sure in some way are throwbacks probably to something that may have happened previously in old comics with Cave Carson. But it, again, because of what we know about a cybernetic eye or what we don't know about a cybernetic eye, as part of the storyline, part of the plot, is what he's actually seeing and experiencing always accurate? Is it always real? So kind of intrigued of as what could happen. And what's really funny is that basically makes 3 solid psychedelic books that are being put out on this imprint right now. Because obviously Doom Patrol earns its cachet with being surreal. Shade the Changing Girl is pure surreality and poetry, and then there's this, which is weird science at its most extreme.
We're going to be looking forward to Mother Panic, which is the 4th title coming out, which appears to be firmly set in Gotham City. So that should be interesting. Brian, you had mentioned the ass in the book.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy this?
No, I did. I like Oeming's art a lot, and it is very different for him to sort of work on this kind of trippy, semi-psychedelic-ish book. I have no backstory with the Cave character. I mean, I knew the Metal Men were, and there were certainly references to DC at large, but I'm interested in it. I feel like this and Doom Patrol are just a little outside my accessibility limit. But I'm patient, and I like the properties enough. Well, Doom Patrol at least, and I'm curious enough to see where these are going that I'm gonna stay with them. I haven't picked up Shade the Changing Woman yet. I got to get that, and We'll see about the other ones that are coming, but yeah, it was okay. The ass quotient was up, and not just like Dick Grayson, Nightwing ass in latex. These were just straight up male butts. So any book that does that, I can't complain.
It's Tina Belcher's favorite new book.
All right, I will go on to my choice, but something I just wanted to double back to what Richard had said. Richard, I also have severely retracted in regards to the amount of Marvel books that I'm reading.
Yeah.
I am down to Spider-Man, Hellcat, Scarlet Witch, Spider-Gwen, and Squadron Supreme. And
lots of S's
two of those
right there.
Two of those solely on the author, because I don't think I would have really been jumping at least into Scarlet Witch. And I am looking forward to where Clone Conspiracy goes, because apart from a little bit of Ben Reilly in part of his run, we haven't really seen Dan Slott attack the clone issue. So I really want to see where that goes, because I do think we're at a point with Dan Slott on Spider-Man where it was like the last 10 or so issues of Bendis on Avengers, where it was like, okay, can we wrap this up yet? Because I do think sometimes you overstay your welcome, and I just hope he gets that back, because he has become probably my favorite Spider-Man writer since Jerry Conway, so I will be looking forward to Clone Conspiracy. I am going to be talking about another company's book and another company's property that this comic book company's putting out, and aiding in an initiative to provide a cohesive universe for a number of properties, and that is Revolution from IDW, which is bringing together the worlds of G.I. Joe and Transformers and smaller properties like Action Man and ROM and Micronauts and Mask. There has been lead up to this in Micronauts and ROM that I have read. We had talked about ROM number 1 with the surprise appearance of G.I. Joe at the end. And Revolution 1 takes that a step further. What the principal basis of the story is relies on the Transformers, who at this point in this universe have saved the world a couple times, but people are developing suspicions, much like as we've seen in a couple of the movies in the past there. They are in Oregon, some of them, mining a property, and nobody knows exactly why they are mining it, and they've kept mum. The United States government entrusts G.I. Joe to go after why they are mining this Ore 13, which has also led to a couple of explosions. Tying it into ROM, there is one principal character with G.I. Joe who, without spoiling, has been compromised. The thing I really liked about this book, and let me just give you the team that's there. The writers are John Barber and Cullen Bunn, with art by Fico Ozzio, who has a pretty nice style and is pretty adept at switching back and forth between very different concepts between a human and then however the hell you want to characterize the Transformers at. All you have to know is basically G.I. Joe is a military operation and the Transformers are robots from another planet. That's basically all you need to know about the backstory. In terms of the other characters, one thing this book did is making me interested in the Action Man character, which is a British spinoff of G.I. Joe. I think with what it sets out to do of marrying these disparate universes together, and this is somebody, I'm reading Micronauts, I'm reading ROM. I don't think I've ever been a regular G.I. Joe reader in my life, and God knows I can say that about Transformers. I just possess a basic understanding. I'm still enjoying this a lot. I love crossovers. I know there are people who just cry and they're like, yeah, it interrupts the natural flow of a book, blah blah blah. I'm sorry. I don't think there's anything more fun than seeing different elements together in the same story, especially in comic book form. So I have read some of the ancillary books. So far we've had ROM, Micronauts, and Mask. Mask has been some of the most interesting tie-ins back to the G.I. Joe universe. Without going into specifics, one character in the traditional Mask cartoon series was a villain, has a slightly different role, at least in this point in time, which I thought was a nice twist. I am going to stick with this. I'm not sure if I'm going to be buying every tie-in. I don't think they are necessary to the main story, but at least in terms of the main Revolution series, I will be picking that up. So that's the book I wanted to talk about, which was Revolution from IDW. Is anyone else touching this?
Not really, but it is. I mean, it's
Yeah.
intriguing that IDW has been able to, and this is not the first sort of licensed comic tie-in that they've or a crossover that they've done. They've done Infestation in the past. I think there's another one.
But again, with those, they were taking a core concept and applying it to there wasn't really interaction.
Yeah, it was just they were experiencing the same kind of situation just on the different titles. But this is it's really interesting that they had the ability to fully create and commit to a crossover with all these different characters, with all these different properties, and do it in a way that makes sense, as opposed to
it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad they didn't bring in My Little Pony. But then again, that might be really interesting. Yeah. You also come away from the book feeling that this is part of something much bigger from Hasbro. Seeing the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and seeing what DC is attempting to do with their recent films, I would not be surprised if some of these elements come into future films.
Well, they've actually already stated that Transformers and G.I. Joe, I think, are in the same universe. I want to say that they've officially mentioned that with the movies. So I think that at least this could be, like you said, it could be sort of a precursor or maybe a test run for something a little bit more big screen and big budget.
Okay, well, we're going to move on to the final segment of our show, which is the segment we call the Woofs of the Week, and that's where we spotlight something, be it a film or a charitable initiative or a movie, anything under the sun that we might think that you, fair listener, would be interested in sampling. So we are nothing if not gracious to our guests, so let me throw it over to Richard first. Richard, what is your Woof of the Week?
Well, a lot of things were fighting for that there when you first mentioned it, but I've got to say it's a little card game put out by my booth makes there, Gateway Comics, called Slash Bang Dead. And it basically it's kind of a rock, paper, scissors, but with sword and gun, dynamite, there's a shield involved, but it's something that you can learn in probably 2 or 3 minutes, and play your opponent is you're really more trying to anticipate what your opponent's going to do, and you only have 1 life point. So a game might last 1 turn. I haven't seen a game last much more than 8 or 10 turns, but it's just meant to be kind of a quick pickup game that you play in between games or while somebody's setting the board or during lunch or whatever. But I have to say it's incredibly fun, and they're going to be doing a Kickstarter for that coming up really soon too. So Gateway Comics / Bang Dead. It's a fun little game. They even have some metal cards they're going to be giving out as a reward too. So you get both decks, which basically is 5 cards you play with, 1 counter card, and on each side. And it's not one of those collectible card games where you're endlessly searching for a certain kind of dragon or something. You just you get everything you need to play, and it's a lot of fun. It's deceptively simple, but still it's more trying to figure out your opponent. And I've had a lot of fun. I kind of play tested it with people. And tie-in. There's going to be, of course, one of the cards is the sword for the slash part, but there's going to be a Stabbity Bunny slash card, and
awesome.
with a very big knife. And in fact, though not so completely official, we have talked about an entire Stabbity Bunny version, because there are cast members in Stabbity Bunny on the good side and the bad side that could step in and just make a complete, much like the Walking Dead, Monopoly, etc., the Stabbity Bunny edition of / Bang Dead as well. So, check it out.
Sweet. Let's go over to Steve. Steve, what is your Woof of the Week?
Well, I am a Doctor Who fan, so of course, Brian, you know all about this. Doctor Who, of course, has been taking its sweet, sweet time getting back onto TV. They took an extended break for the entire year of 2016. I think the only thing we'll be getting this year from the series is a Christmas special, like we have in previous years. before the new season debuts next year. But they've gifted us, the gods of BBC have gifted us with a spin-off series that I have been describing to everybody as Torchwood meets Teen Wolf. And it's the new series called Class that is on BBC. I believe it's BBC Two. And basically it takes place at the Coal Hill Academy, formerly the Coal Hill School, which is that same school that has been featured in Doctor Who since the 60s, as a place where they are constantly going back to. That's the school where Clara and Danny Pink taught at in the last two seasons. And of course, because a lot of things and a lot of plots and a lot of episodes have revolved around things happening in and around the school, it is now, as the plot tells us, a hotbed for alien and monster activity. And several of the students get wrapped up in this. There's a couple aliens that are also part of the cast with very interesting backstories. It's got a lot of humor, which of course all Doctor Who series have, but it's also a lot gorier than Doctor Who normally is, because Doctor Who tends to, even though there is a lot of scares and some great thrills, tends to be a little bit more family friendly in most cases. Class is not. There's full-on swearing. There's really a lot of gore, including people getting skinned alive and getting sliced in half. But it's exciting. It's fun. And if you like Teen Wolf, if you like Buffy, or if you like Torchwood and kind of want a lot more of that, angst and violence, definitely check out Class if you can. I know it's currently showing in Canada on Space. It's in the UK on BBC. And it should be premiering in the US, I believe, on BBC America in January. But there's other ways to pick it up if you want to see it sooner.
My God, we have to wait till January.
Yeah. Unless you can find a way to watch it, because it does air concurrently in Canada and the UK. So
that's so frustrating, and I think the only reason they're doing that is because of Dirk Gently.
Stupid Dirk Gently, which of course I've heard is also kind of fun, but
it is. It's fun.
Let's move over to Brian. Brian, what is your Wolf of the Week?
So I had the pleasure, and I feel kind of bad a little bit about discussing this, but I got to sit down and talk politics. And I originally intended it to be like this sort of Bear All-Star podcast thing, and it still turned out that way. But I got to sit and talk right like seconds after the third debate. I got to talk with Bill, my buddy here, of course, and Carl Frisch, who, if you don't know Carl, if you watch the Stephanie Miller show, listen, right? Listen or watch, both.
You can still watch it. Carl's usually a call-in. You can watch her on Free Speech TV.
There we go. Thank you. Because I've caught it like once in passing, and I don't make a point to, but I should, because Carl's not only a good friend of mine, but also this very savvy political analyst, has worked both on the Republican and Democratic sides of the aisle over his long career in politics, and is just super insightful. And so Bill, Carl, and I had a very, I wouldn't say spirited in the sense that we were arguing with each other that much, but definitely we were reacting very vehemently about the third and really everything up to that, but specifically the third debate. This is on the Flame On SoundCloud page. It's not in the feed, mainly because it didn't really fit within the sort of parameters of our normal gay and geeky stuff. It's very gay, and in some ways politics is pretty damn geeky as well, but it's if I'll probably share it. I think we actually may have even shared it already on Comic Bears, but if not, we'll put it up there. It's a little over an hour, and it's just, if you're like me and you're listening to NPR Politics podcast, 538's podcast, watching the, nightly talking heads, watching Sunday's talking, like if you're pretty immersed in the political world right now with all the craziness with the election, then I think you will enjoy it. If that's totally not your thing, I completely understand. And for many people, that is decreasingly their thing, getting a little fatigued with the election. But check it out, Flame On Show on SoundCloud. If you just look up Flame On SoundCloud, you'll find it, or Flame On Show on the Facebook. We have a post about it, and like I said, we'll put it up at Comic Book Bears. But thank you, Bill, for doing it. And I promise you this, because we left out my dear friend Steve here, only because of a potential conflict and everything else. We're gonna have to do something else soon, I think, that'll scratch different itches than we normally scratch on this show together. So.
And again, I'm testifying that I've been a huge fan of Stephanie Miller to be able to talk with Carl about politics. I mean, it just amazes me that this show that I was listening to so long, I've developed a relationship with Chris Lavoie, and that he's worn the Comic Book Bears T-shirt on television, and that you have this relationship with Carl, and it just blew my mind. It really did, and I absolutely love talking politics, and I will do that again, even as much as this election is battering our psyches. Still, it was a great release.
Yes.
Because this election has brought out a lot of passions on various different levels, and I think there's a need for a lot of people to discuss. I've had more political discussions about this election than all of them combined in my lifetime, and with people who I never expected to have political conversations with. I think we all are agreed that we just can't wait for it to be over, too. Yeah,
I want to move into the next phase. I want to talk about what happens next. That's fascinating. I think that's going to become more fascinating soon. So.
Yep. Well, I'm going to go on to my woof of the week, and I'll try to be brief about this. And it's podcast influenced. A podcast that Steve got me hooked on was You Must Remember This, which details the secret and or forgotten history of Hollywood during its first 100 years. They recently had a mini-season which dealt with Joan Crawford, under the assumption that Joan Crawford basically spans the entirety of the talkie studio system. And I have seen the major Joan Crawford films like Mildred Pierce and Johnny Guitar, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, but there's dozens of Joan Crawford movies that I've never seen. And this scratched that itch. And one film I watched, and it's kind of perfect timing to talk about this, is a film called Sudden Fear. It's from 1952. It also stars Jack Palance, and it's a story about this woman who Joan Crawford plays, Myra Hudson, who is a successful Broadway playwright. She is involved in the casting of the show. There's an actor, Lester Blaine, played by Jack Palance, who she rejects for the role. However, later they have what may be a chance meeting on a train, which develops into a romance, which develops into a marriage. But this is a film noir, and there's some tricky things going on in the background. Myra is actually an heiress, and she decides that she's going to leave the bulk of her fortune to a foundation. And this doesn't go over too well with Lester. And it also doesn't go over too well with his ex-girlfriend, Irene, who is still in the picture. And there's a lot of scenes in the movie which run so slow, but because of the lack of speed, the level of tension is incredible. And it also showed me signs of Joan Crawford. You see her sweating, you see her crying, and usually when you see Joan Crawford, it's perfectly made up. Even if she's a woman in distress, she looks like she just stepped out of Max Factor. This takes a little bit of liberty with that perception, with also a twist at the end, which I really did not see coming. And the film is actually out of print right now, but there is going to be a DVD that comes out on December 13th of this year. And that is from Sony. That's a Blu-ray reissue of that with a restoration. I'm hoping that there are some bonus features, because I think I would be picking that up because I enjoyed it that much. Sudden Fear from 1952, starring Joan Crawford. That's my Wolf of the Week. Richard, thank you again for coming on to the show. It is much appreciated. Why don't you take this opportunity to let people know where they can contact you on the interwebs and everything that people need to know about contact points for Stabbity Bunny, and specifically the Stabbity Bunny Kickstarter for number 5.
All right, great. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on again. And, as we all weathered through our colds there, and only now am I trying to clear my throat and cough. But Stabbity Bunny, STABBITYBUNNY .com. is kind of the central place to find everything about Stabbity Bunny. There are links to the Kickstarter there. Also, the Stabbity Bunny Facebook page is probably where I'm most active, much less so on Twitter, etc. But it's just my comfort zone, and also where I met a lot of the people that I work with now. But we have that. We have the Kickstarter, which if you go to Kickstarter.com, Kickstarter.com, and if you just do a search, believe it or not, there aren't that many Stabbity Bunnies out there. But if you want to add number 5, then you'll get our current campaign and not the old one. But yeah, check us out. Like I said, we've got that. We've got a video that Wayne Hall found this great music out there for our video. I think it looks really good. And if you can endure the first 40 seconds of kind of my slow droning voice talking to you, then you've got some great visuals from the book to look at after that. And also some really haunting music. Of course, we get messages and updates and everything. And just to let you know, we're now at 113% of goal.
All right.
So a little notice popped up there. But we are very, very close to our first stretch goal, which is the basically a 6x9 of the cover of Stabbity, the convention cover of Stabbity Bunny #1, the bunny standing in the bloody smiley face, which is kind of the symbol that's gone on T-shirts and everything else, and also a pinup that was done by Aaron Conley, who of course has done Sabretooth Swordsman. He's done other work for Dark Horse. He has done work for Marvel. He's all over the place. I'm not sure if IDW or not, but I know that he did a little story in one of the Mouse Guard books. So we were really thrilled that Aaron did a pinup for us, and those first 2 prints will go to everybody who have pledged at the $10 or more level, which is, well, just about everybody. Then right after that, soon after, there's one more art print, but after that we start getting into variant covers and other exciting things, including, if we go far enough, a digital copy of issue 6 as well, kind of jumping ahead there in the Kickstarter world. But so there's a possibility that the people who pledge at those lower levels not only will get issue 5, which we're working on now, but issue 6, which should be ready right around January.
Good to hear. Thank you again, and hopefully we will get some additional Kickstarters in your arsenal there from people that listen to the show. Thank you for listening. We are the Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. If you want to reach out to us, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. You can subscribe to us through iTunes and listen to us through various platforms. Until next time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear Woof and an explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof!
I got a razor in my purse called Sunshine, you know what I mean. I'm dying to be under his furs. I'm aching to be wrapped in your furs. Rise and shine, shake the day off, come inside. Hey honey, are you with me or not? A kiss and bang on my hips, come and lay.